10 weeks ago, we set about to do this investigation. We've since conducted over 70 interviews. We've reviewed more than 250,000 documents. And at the same time, we have facilitated cooperation with other ongoing investigations. And I'm here today to tell you our bottom line findings and then to answer your questions. We probably won't be able to get to everything today. You'll probably have many more questions as you read our 345-page report, which we consider to have been based on a thorough and exhaustive review. I'll be happy to take questions as you go through that report later and to get you the information that you request. But for today's purposes, let me come to the bottom line findings. First, in connection with allegations related to the George Washington Bridge realignment, we found that Governor Christie had no knowledge beforehand of this George Washington Bridge realignment idea, and that he played no role whatsoever in that decision or the implementation of it. We further found no evidence that anyone in the governor's office, besides Bridget Kelly, knew of this idea in advance, or played any role in the decision or the implementation of it. What we did find was that after the decision to implement the lane realignment, while it was going on and in its aftermath, the members of the governor's office, some of them, became aware of the lane realignment, inquired of Port Authority representatives, and were told this was a legitimate traffic study and that it was an operational issue for the Port Authority to deal with. We further found that as the controversy grew, by early December, as there were rumors about potential of others' involvement, appropriate steps were taken to try to determine if anyone else in the governor's office, anyone in the governor's office, was involved in the lane realignment decision. And that when those appropriate inquiries were made, Bridget Kelly lied to her colleagues and even reached out to a subordinate and asked them to destroy a potentially incriminating document. And we further found that it was not until January the 8th, 2014, when documents that had been subpoenaed were first revealed, that they showed that David Wildstein and Bridget Kelly had participated in this act, this decision, and the implementation of it to realign the George Washington Bridge lanes at Fort Lee. And we further found, based on our investigation, that David Wildstein is the person who originated this idea and orchestrated it, that David Wildstein went to Bridget Kelly for approval in the governor's office, and that they had an ulterior motive for implementing that decision to in some way target Mayor Sokolich in Fort Lee. We're not able to answer every question today. We're not able to answer what that ulterior motive was, but we can say that the evidence does not establish that that ulterior motive was to target Mayor Sokolich because he did not endorse Governor Christie for re-election. In fact, there's substantial contrary evidence. In fact, the evidence shows that both the governor's office and the Christie campaign knew as early as March 2013 that Mayor Sokolich would not be endorsing the governor for re-election. Yet, by his own account, he continued to have good relations with the Christie administration, and indeed was on a list of mayors being considered for honorary appointments by the governor as recently as May 2013. We further find that when the governor became aware that Bridget Kelly in his office had been involved in the decision to close these lanes, he took appropriate action. He fired Bridget Kelly, and then he commissioned this investigation and made a public commitment early on, before our investigation had progressed beyond its initial stages, that he was going to release our findings to the public before he could have known what they would be and what our recommendations would be. And he directed us on the day we were retained, which was the first time I ever met Governor Christie, to find out what the facts are, whatever they may be, to report them back to the governor's office, and to make recommendations as we saw fit to address the problems so that something like this never happens again. And that is what we have done in our 345-page report. Now, as to the second issue that we were asked to investigate, involving Hoboken's Sandy Aid, we find that Mayor Zimmer's allegations that members of the Christie administration delivered a message from the governor to her threatening Hoboken's Sandy Aid unless she supported a private development project are not only unsubstantiated, they are demonstrably false in material respects. Mayor Zimmer's subjective perceptions do not match the objective reality reflected in the hard evidence that we uncovered during our investigation. In fact, they are contradicted by contemporaneous documents, witness accounts, and her own prior statements. So no remedial actions are required in regard to those allegations. Finally, I wanted to briefly summarize some of the recommendations that we have made to the governor. Because while the actions of the few, there is a violation, a breach of the public trust that we take very seriously, and we take our mandate very seriously to make recommendations to the governor that something, and his office, that something like this never happen again. So among the recommendations that we have made to the governor's office are that IGA, that's the Intergovernmental Affairs Office, that was run by Bridget Kelly in 2013, that office be disbanded and that the governor's office be reorganized, its functions be combined with those of the governor's office of constituent relations into an office of legislative and constituent services, to get back to the original mission of that office, which was to provide constituent services, to provide services to local elected officials in a nonpartisan way, open to all. The way that office functioned during the first 3+ years of Governor Christie's administration, until the aberrational behavior directed by Bridget Kelly in 2013. And the mission of that office should be made crystal clear: to be a service function for all in a nonpartisan manner. Second, we have recommended to the governor's office that the governor appoint an ombudsman and a chief ethics officer for the governor's office. The ombudsman would be a senior statesman of unquestioned integrity and independence, to report directly to the governor and to issue periodic reports to the public as both a resource, a sounding board, and a place to go for complaints within the governor's office. And we have recommended separately the appointment of a chief ethics officer for the office of the governor to be responsible for ethics enforcement, conflicts, issue resolution, and training. And that person should have a direct reporting relationship both with the chief counsel to the governor, the ombudsman, and an ability to report to the governor as well. Finally, in regard to the Port Authority, which is where this lane realignment was effectuated, we recommend the appointment of a bi-state commission to examine ways in which to fundamentally restructure and reform the Port Authority to ensure its independence and professionalism. This incident exemplifies that there are times within the Port Authority where the rivalries between New York and New Jersey have led to communication failures and other problematic issues. A bi-state commission appointed by both governors can look at ways to help improve the operations of the Port Authority, to make it truly independent and professional to serve the needs of both states. In the first instance, a commission will hopefully look at these types of issues. First, whether it's appropriate to restructure so that there are New Jersey and New York divisions, functions, projects, principally in one state or the other, that will be run by each of those states so that those states will be truly accountable for the projects applicable to each state. Second, to look at ways to restructure the appointments process at the Port Authority to encourage independence and professionalism. Terms of years, staggered terms that will exceed the lengths of terms of governors, and joint appointments by both governors to increase independence and responsibility within the Port Authority. That is a brief summary, ladies and gentlemen, of our findings and recommendations, and now I would be pleased to take questions.